So now we're ready to put these parts together and do our translations by accessing the Mongo database. While we could access the Mongo database directly, oftentimes from Node, a library name called Mongoose will be used. So we need to look at how to install another package for our system. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can do this, right? Again, if you read the book or read up on some of these things, you'll notice there is this package.json file here, and technically we could actually edit in and add in the dependency for Mongoose directly here, and then we could run the appropriate npm command to install that for us. But let me show you what WebStorm allows us to do. So let me just go ahead and close this. So I'm going to bring up the project settings. Basically, it's Control-Alt-S, or I could just right-click here. I'm sorry, I can actually make sure that that's selected, and then I can go to the settings option here. Okay, so here's our settings option. And I'm going to go to, I believe it's there it is. Yes, language and frameworks. I could spin this open. But basically, this is the one that I want, Node.js and NPM. So when I click on that, you'll notice it opens up this. It's going to take a minute. And basically, it shows me all of the packages that we are using for this project. Okay, so all of those are there. You'll notice the Node.js core library is enabled. We do want that. Otherwise, we'll start to get errors when we were using. If you are getting errors about the Node.js core libraries, you'd want to come in here and make sure to click enable. But that should be done by default when creating the project the way we did in the first video. Okay, so what we do is we're just going to click on the plus sign here, and basically we have all these various Node packages, so I'm just going to type in what I want, namely Mongoose. Right, and there it is. It actually finds Mongoose, it finds the latest version, and so forth. Now, I could actually just click install and that be that, but if I want this again to act the way and to sort of act in the same manner that that everything else is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to options. And I'm going to put in the tac save option. So what this does is when it does the install, it will actually also update package.json for us. Okay, so we'll do this. I'll click install package. It will really only take a second or so. Largely depends on your internet speed. It's a little longer than normal, but all right. And there it is. It says that it was in fact installed successfully. So now I can close this. Now, unfortunately, and technically I think this is really a bug here, it doesn't actually show up in this list right now. If I click OK, however, then if I do Control-Alt-S to bring that back up, notice that Mongoose is in fact listed in that. So it is in fact installed. And furthermore, since we did the tac save option, you'll notice that that it is in fact listed now under the dependencies here. And furthermore, you know, as sort of a one more test, I mean, if we look in Node modules, we should actually find someplace down here that that Mongoose was installed. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. There's Mongoose. Okay, so we do see that that these were installed accordingly. Okay, so let's look at using Mongoose for our database, right? So I should still have. Let me go back over to here, and we'll take a look. Yes, my Mongo database is still running. We are going to need that running because now we're going to be actually connecting to the database itself. So first things first, all up in here where we have all of these various statements for using the various libraries, I'm going to add the appropriate statement also for Mongoose. So again, we'll do a require and add in the name of the package. There it is. Okay, so we require Mongoose and setting the variable Mongoose to that. Now, that's not enough. There's no connection that happens just yet. We need to actually make that connection ourselves. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually right up at the top here, I'll just say db setup. Yes, that's fine. So what we need is we say mongoose and connect, and then we need a connect string. Okay, so our connect string for mongoose database looks like this. It is mongodb : / and then we need the host, localhost, and then we need the name of our database. And once again, remember, the database name is PirateDB, like so. So that will attempt to connect to our Mongo database. And again, just to kind of prove this, let me actually hit Control-C to shut down the Mongo server. So now when I run my web application, it should die a horrible death. It should die because it's unable to connect to the database. And that's fine. That's what we want. Right, there it is. If we kind of scroll back up through, yeah, failed to connect to server on first connect. Yes, because I had shut down the database server. On the other hand, if we start the server back up, there it is. And now I go to run this, we see, yeah, it's up, it's running, it should in fact be connected. Yes, let's see. So we are in fact connected and running and so forth. We're good. Okay. Now, in addition to connecting to the database, one of the things that Mongoose gives us is it gives us a sort of what is known as an object relational mapper, an ORM. And basically what we do is here inside here we can define what's known as the schema for our particular type of data that's being stored. Okay, so I'll just put in define the schema. So I'll call it something like, I don't know, let's call it the translate schema. And so we'll use new, and we'll call the mongoose schema constructor, and that's going to take a map. Now, very importantly, okay, what we basically need to do, we need to do a couple of things. We need to specify essentially what the particular fields are here. So we need phrase and translation, and that needs to be spelled exactly. So if you change case, that will not work. And it will not work in sort of the worst way. Namely, it will basically it will just silently not give you results and so forth without giving you any kind of error. Okay, so be very careful when you're doing this. So we do want phrase, we do want translation. We don't have to add in ID. We'll just kind of get that. We get that sort of for free. So it's phrase, and then we need to specify the type of data that is being stored in phrase. Well, that's just a string. Okay, so we do just that. Then our other one we saw was named translation, and that's also a string. Okay, there are other things like number and so forth. And then with number, you can actually do limits on things. So you can specify a min and a max and all of those kinds of things. So just to give you a quick idea, right? So I believe it's something like type and number, and then there's a min, and so I could specify something like that, and a max, and right, etc. But in our case, we're just dealing with strings here. So there's our schema object itself. Once we have a schema, what we need to do is create what's called the model. And the model is actually used for a couple of things. The model would be used if we were creating new records to insert into the database, but it's also used when we want to look up information in the database, and that's what we're going to need to do here. So, the model itself, again, I'm going to use a let statement. And so I'll just say, okay, let's call it pirate trans. And so then we'll say mongoose model. Okay, and then we need to specify a couple of things. Okay, so first we are specifying basically the collection. And here is where I don't need to specify the S on that. Mongoose will actually add that in directly for us. And then we need to pass along the schema that we just created too, so that it knows what schema to use for this particular model. If we had multiple collections, if we had multiple documents within this collection, then we would, I'm sorry, if we had multiple collections, yes, I was right the first time, then we would actually need to have multiple schemas as well to define those particular things, right? So there it is. There's our setup for that. Okay. Again, let's just try some stuff out here. Okay, so we'll do the translate endpoint, and again we're going to set this up as a get, and once again, just like before, we're going to use the arrow function for defining an anonymous function for this. Okay, like everything, we want to try to write the minimal amount of code possible to test to see if things are working, and then add on from there. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to grab the input, and again we'll expect that we're just going to say that, yeah, that's going to come in the same way, namely it's going to be called the parameter is going to be called text. This is actually a good opportunity. You know, I forgot to mention it before, but one of the things that I'm actually missing here is I'm not doing any sanitization of my input. So, you know, generally speaking, whenever you're taking input from the user, and that's certainly what we're doing here, even though it's going to ultimately be sent by Ajax, we want to make sure that that the data that we're getting is valid for what we're using. It doesn't have any kind of weird characters and so forth. I'm not actually doing that here, and realistically, for the most part, we should be okay. But generally, you know, you do want to be kind of careful about those kinds of things. All right. So, all I'm going to do here right now is let's actually just do a quick lookup for us on that. So, to do the lookup, what we're going to need to do is we basically use the model that we created. There's Pirate Trans, and then it has on it a find method. Okay, so the find method works similarly to what we were doing before for finding. We're going to need to do a couple of things. First, we're basically going to specify what it is that we're looking for. So we'll say phrase : and again, so in this case, we're basically going to pass along that particular text. Then we need a callback for that, and this callback is a little bit different from how the callbacks are structured with Node. Okay, so the way this callback is actually going to work is that the first parameter is the error. So if there happens to be an error that is generated from this call to find, then error will actually have that particular value. Then this part here is the actual result itself of what our search is. Okay. So I can probably do this actually now, rather than do a full-on find. I can say find one. And then I'll just call it record. right? Because I expect that there's only going to be a single match for some particular phrase, right? That is, there aren't in our database. It isn't the case where we have multiple translations for different translations for the same phrase. On the other hand, what we do have, for instance, is something where for different phrases we might actually have similar translate or identical translation. So an example of this is, for instance, here, where we have the phrase being "sir" and the translation is "matey," and then again when the phrase is "friend," again the translation is "matey." So find one will work for this particular purpose. So first thing I'm just going to do is say, okay, if we have some sort of error, I'll do something like console log, and I'm going to output that error. And then, of course, I probably want to send back something here. And so I'll just do something like that. Okay. Then I can have an else, right? Now, so we've handled the case of there being an error. It might be the case that our attempt to do a lookup didn't actually find anything. Okay, so if that's the case, then rec is going to be equal to null. Okay, and so again, then I can just do something like this. And then finally, here we have victory. That is, we have actually found an appropriate record. And so I'm just going to say rec JSON, and what I'll do is I'm actually just going to return the entire record at that point. Okay, so that kind of gives us that. Let's actually take a look, try playing around with this. All right, so it is in fact running. Let's go over to here. Whoop. Don't need that open. Let's go over to here. And then we want to go to translate, question mark, text equals hello. And text is not found. Let's see, what did we do here? So apt-get. Oops. Rec query text, rec query, that should be in there just fine. Let's double check. Okay, that one's working. Apt-get, let's see, line 50. Oh, yes, you're right. The variable is input. Okay, let's rerun that. And so we'll come in here, we will load this, and notice there it actually found that record where the phrase was hello, like so. Let's try some other stuff, right? So, for instance, sir, there that is. Friend, okay. One more, miss, right? How about Beyonce? Doesn't find a translation for that. Okay. So now that we have that, let's take a look at how we're going to make use of this. So we need to do a couple of different things. One is, if I go back over to the main page, Right now, I don't have the option to do a translate. We only have the shouting option. So let's actually add that in. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over to index.jade, and we're going to, right above our input field, we're going to add in another option, namely a select. And I'm going to use the ID of mode because it is the particular mode that we're using, whether it's shout or whether it's translate. Again, yes, we're fine. And then let's give the particular options. So we'll have a value equal to, and so our default one was shout. And that shout is what will be displayed. And here we will have translate be the value, and again, and then I'll just put translation for what is in fact displayed. Make sure that's saved. Let me go back over to here and do a reload, and notice there is our box for selecting the particular options. Okay, so that's pretty good. Then we can do this kind of a couple of different ways. I can go back and finish up the code for translate, or I can finish up kind of the code for the JavaScript. Since I'm kind of working here, I think I'll actually work on the code for the JavaScript. So changing the JavaScript file is actually pretty easy. Okay, so all we're going to do is right up here, we're going to do a search for mode, and we will get the the value of mode. Okay, so whatever value is selected, that's the one that we're going to get. And then all we need to do is change this little bit here. Instead of always requesting from shout, we will simply request from there. Okay? So this gives us the ability to based on whatever mode is, that will change the particular route that is in fact going to be sent. Again, I probably would want to be a little more careful to make sure that mode is either only shout or translate, not something else, so that we're not somehow opening ourselves up to allowing them to make various calls on our system. Okay, but I'm not going to bother with that. You know how to write if-else statements and so forth. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go back to the code and take a look at patching the rest of this in. So now that I know that this actually works for a single one, I'm actually going to change, I'm going to kind of work around and change this a little bit. So once we get whatever text it is that we want translated, we're going to actually have to do a bit of work. So here's the basic idea, right? Essentially, what I need to do is for whatever phrase, whatever text is entered, I need to do a sort of global search and replace. What I need to do is for every single record that is in here, I need to look for this phrase. And if that phrase happens to be in there, then I need to replace that, every occurrence of that phrase, with this translation. So that's basically what we need to actually make happen with this. Okay. So let's take a look at making this happen. So the first thing is, go back to app.js. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change this from find one to find all, because what I need to do is get every single one of the records. And the way that I can do that is to just do this. I can do find with an empty pair of braces. And so that will literally just find all of the records in that particular collection. Okay. Again, like before, if it's the case that that we have that there was an error, we're going to actually log that error, and then we're just going to return sort of a null result. Or I could actually just kind of make it a little bit nicer. Well, I could put in a couple of different things. I could put something like this, db error. There we go. If we didn't find anything, you know, same type of thing. All right, it shouldn't be the case that we shouldn't find all of the records. So again, that's going to be some sort of DB error. I could even kind of consolidate these, so I could have if error or right. So we can do this. Actually, I'll leave it since here I'm logging it. Okay, now down here we're not just returning that itself, and in fact, let me actually change this name to that. Okay, so there's all records. So all records now basically is going to be an array of all of the individual records. Okay, so for instance, if I do a console log of all records like so, and you know, I could just do a res JSON. Got him. So let's take a look at this. Yes, I probably need to restart. Rec is not, yes, you're right, rec is not defined because now it is all records. And it won't be null, it would actually be that if we couldn't find anything. There we go, we see got them. And if I come down here, notice there are all the records being printed, and notice the additional square brace because this is an array of each of those maps or each of those objects. Okay, so we are in fact able to get all of those. Okay, so we're just about there. So what we basically need to do now is we need to iterate through all the records. There we go. And perhaps one of the easiest ways of doing this in JavaScript is the arrays in JavaScript have a for each method. And what for each allows us to do is we can specify a callback function that will be executed for every element in that particular array. So it's really handy, right? So I can say, okay, here's an individual record, and then I'll just create the little callback here. And so for the most part, it looks it looks almost like a regular for loop here. Okay, so for every one of these things, what I'm going to do is I will do this. I will say, okay, I'm going to set text itself. Remember, that's actually called it input. Oh, what the heck. I think in this case, text is probably more appropriate because of what we're going to do with this. So let me go ahead and just do a refactor, rename, and we'll call it text. There. Okay, so we're going to set text equal to. So we will do text itself, and then there is a replace method in the string class. Okay, and so let me let me just show you kind of how this stuff, how this actually works. So I'll come back over here. Let me go ahead and run node. So I have my JavaScript interpreter. So suppose I have a string like fee, fi, fee, fum. And then I can do replace. And then I can create a regular expression and say that I'm going to look for phi. And then I'm also going to pass in the option of G for my regular expression, which basically says I'm doing a global replace. And then I could do something like this. I could say, oh, okay, let's actually replace those with nothing, for instance. So when I do that, notice that's what happens, right? So we see every occurrence of phi was removed from the string. Maybe we wanted to star those out. And that looks like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is basically the same idea here, except for our translations, right? So up here, I'll say I'll create a new regular expression. And then I will take the phrase from the record. And again, just like before, we'll do global search. And what are we going to replace it with? Well, we're going to replace it with the translation, like so. Okay, so there that is. Then in terms of our JSON, remember our JSON, our script that we wrote expects that it gets back, right? So again, just kind of coming back into here, notice it expects that the JSON it's getting back, data, basically has a key called result that holds the result. So again, all we're going to do is we're just going to stuff this into here, like so. All right, so make sure, let me go ahead and rerun this. Then I'm going to come back over to here and let's go up to the top. Right, so hello, what, etc. Now let's try translation. And hello. Oops. Really? Something weird is happening there. That should be working. Let's take a look. Oh, yes. I see what I did. What I did is, notice I'm actually looking up the value of mode here right in document ready. I'm not doing it when there is the change event on the text box. So basically it's always going to be shouting. So we take that and all we need to do is simply move that down to say here. Okay, so now we'll do this every time the data in the text box changes. Actually, when we modify it and then hit enter. So again, I can reload this. All right, let's take a look. So hello, yes, that's fine. Let's go over to translate and we'll say hello, friend. Right, and there it is. Okay. Now, one word about this, just to kind of show you the implementation that I have, SSI, notice we get that, right? So part of it is we aren't actually checking to see that that these are actual words themselves. Let me just see if we can kind of make this fix really quickly. I believe, so if we do MDN regexp, let's do that. Yeah, there's that. There is a way specifying in a pattern that that we're looking for word boundaries. There it is, probably right here. Yeah, so that's the beginning, and these are the beginning and ends of line. Here we are. Yeah. So I believe I might be able to actually fix this just by doing the following. In the regex itself, we will have Right. The double backslash because these are strings, and so in a string a backslash is an escape character. So I need to escape the escape character to get that. So this, I believe, should set it up so that we're not going to capture subwords, for instance. Let's take a look. Oops. Yeah. Right. Mississippi does actually work, but Miss by itself, notice, gets translated into Proud Beauty. And so there our solution is a little bit hardier. Okay, so hopefully that helps you a lot with all these things. Again, if you're in my class, you have questions, hit us up on Piazza. If you found us on the internet, put your questions in the comments below.